Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was the winter of 2016, and David had been working the night shift at a 24-hour self-storage facility in the outskirts of Lincoln, Nebraska. The place sat right off an old highway, flanked by a few abandoned warehouses and surrounded by open fields that stretched for miles. Quiet, desolate. The kind of place where even silence seemed to echo. David was 29 at the time, a quiet guy who didn't mind the isolation. His job was simple: sit in the small office from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., monitor the security cameras, handle any customer calls, and walk the grounds every couple of hours to check for anything unusual. Most nights, nothing ever happened. But on one particular night in late December, something did. It was a little past 1:30 a.m. when David noticed the motion detector light flick on outside Unit 117. He glanced up at the monitor. The camera feed showed the light shining down on the storage unit, but there was nothing there. No car, no person, just an empty patch of gravel. Motion sensors sometimes triggered for no reason. Mice, bugs, or even wind could do it. But something about it felt off. David watched the screen for a while, then reluctantly threw on his coat and grabbed the flashlight. The cold air outside was sharp and unforgiving. His boots crunched against the frost-covered gravel as he made his way past rows of storage units, the only sound being the low hum of overhead security lights. When he reached Unit 117, the motion sensor light clicked off, plunging him into a thick, dark silence. He shined the flashlight around. Nothing. The lock was still on the unit. No footprints, just the distant sound of wind sliding over the fields. He was about to turn back when he thought he heard something, a faint tapping sound, like fingernails lightly scratching metal. He froze. It was coming from inside the unit. He leaned in, placing his ear against the cold metal door. There it was again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, rhythmic. David took a step back, staring at the unit. He checked the log. 117 was registered to a woman named Cheryl Lonsdale. She hadn't been in for over a month. There was no record of recent access. He radioed it in to his supervisor but got no response, just static. Then the tapping stopped. For a long moment, David stood there, the hair on his neck prickling. He finally backed away, muttering to himself, and returned to the office, deciding to log the incident and check again during the next patrol. Around 3 a.m., the phone rang. He jumped. When he picked up, there was no voice, just a low, heavy breathing. He said hello 3 times. Still nothing. Then suddenly, the voice of a woman whispered, "He's awake now." Click. The line went dead. David sat frozen. No caller ID, no way to trace it. He rewound the camera feeds, looking for any sign of someone on the property. That's when he noticed something horrifying. On the camera feed for the hallway just outside the office, there was someone standing there, but he hadn't seen or heard anyone come in. He looked up slowly from the monitor to the hallway window. Nothing. He grabbed his flashlight and inched to the door, opening it just a crack. The hallway was empty, but the motion sensor light just outside the office flicked on. He shut and locked the door. The monitor glitched, just for a second. Then again. Every camera feed blinked out. Then one by one, they returned, except for the one pointing at Unit 117. That one stayed black. Then the phone rang again. He let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, all the monitors went black. The office lights flickered once, then died. David sat in the dark, breathing hard, clutching the flashlight like it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. That's when he heard the sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, gravel crunching just outside the office door. They stopped. Then came a whisper, barely audible through the thin metal. "Let me in." David didn't move, didn't breathe. A sharp, violent knock exploded against the door. Then another. Then silence. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, the lights blinked back on and the monitors flickered to life. Everything looked normal again, except Unit 117. That feed was still black. By the time morning staff arrived, David was pale, shaking, and barely able to speak. He quit that day. 2 weeks later, Unit 117 was opened due to non-payment. Inside, they found dozens of Polaroid photos taped to the walls, pictures of people sleeping in their homes, in their cars, on the bus. One photo showed David, asleep at his desk, time-stamped at 2:48 a.m., the night of the incident. He never went near that place again. No one ever found out who made the calls, or who or what was inside Unit 117.
Story number 2.
It was a quiet Wednesday night when Claire found herself the only person left at the office. The building was a hollow shell of fluorescent lights and humming computers, the usual buzz of daytime chatter completely gone. She was working the graveyard shift, a requirement for the new security system rollout she was managing. The hum of the AC and the occasional creak of the old building were the only sounds breaking the silence. She tried to focus on the code and logs glowing on her monitor, but a gnawing feeling of unease crept in. Something about being completely alone in this cavernous space after hours unsettled her. About an hour into her shift, Claire noticed the building security cameras flicker, then cut to static for a moment. She frowned and refreshed the feed, watching the main lobby. The camera was back on, but the scene looked off. There was a shadow, quick and fleeting, that just passed the reception desk. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. It couldn't be. The office was supposed to be empty. She called security to check, but the line was dead. Trying to shrug it off, she returned to her work. Minutes later, the elevator dinged on the floor above her, even though it shouldn't have been moving at this hour. She got up, heart thudding, and went to the stairwell to check, but it was empty. No sign of anyone. Back at her desk, her screen suddenly went black. The power had gone out in her part of the building. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in a sickly yellow glow. Claire's breath hitched. Then she heard it, the faint sound of footsteps echoing down the long hallway outside her office. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Her phone was dead. No signal. No way to call for help. She grabbed a flashlight from the desk drawer and crept toward the door, trying to keep her breathing steady. The footsteps stopped right outside, then a heavy, rasping breath. Claire froze. The door handle rattled. She yanked her door shut and locked it, pounding her fists against the door, screaming for someone, anyone, to help her. Silence answered back. The footsteps vanished. Minutes passed like hours. Then the lights flickered back on. The camera feeds were all normal again. No sign of intrusion. When morning finally arrived and the day staff showed up, Claire was found huddled in her chair, pale and shaking, unable to explain the shadow or the footsteps. The security logs confirmed no one had entered or exited the building after hours. Yet, Claire never worked the night shift again, and no one ever saw what she saw that terrifying night. But everyone agreed that the office was never quite the same when the lights went out after dark.
Story number 3.
It was just past midnight when Lisa arrived at the office. The towering glass building sat silent in the dead of night, its usual hustle replaced by eerie stillness. She was the lone soul on the night shift, tasked with finishing reports before dawn. The quiet had always been her biggest challenge. No chatter, no footsteps, just the hum of computers and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. The first hour was uneventful. Lisa sat at her desk, methodically going through pages of data, occasionally sipping her lukewarm coffee. Then she noticed something odd. The security camera feed on her monitor flickered. A subtle glitch at first, but then the image wavered like a heat haze. Curious, she leaned closer to the screen. The hallway outside her office appeared empty, but the flickering grew worse until suddenly the feed cut out. She frowned, reaching for the phone to call security, but the line was dead. Her pulse quickened. She checked the other lines, all silent. The building's intercom was also dead. She was truly alone. Trying to shake the unease, she told herself it was probably a system error and went back to work. But moments later she heard it, a faint tapping from the far end of the corridor, like fingernails drumming on metal. Her head snapped up, eyes scanning the dim hallway visible through the glass door. Nothing. The tapping stopped, but then came a low, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled along the floor, slow and deliberate. Her breath hitched, but she forced herself to stand and walk toward the door. Maybe it was just the cleaning crew finishing late? She called out softly, "Hello?" No answer. She stepped out into the hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering above her. The dragging noise stopped. The silence pressed in. She walked slowly toward the stairwell, the nearest exit in case she needed to get out fast. The air grew colder, a chill creeping up her spine. Suddenly, from the darkened end of the hallway, she heard a soft whisper, barely audible. It wasn't a voice she recognized, but it seemed to call her name. "Lisa." The sound was breathy, raspy, like someone exhaling through broken lungs. She froze, heart hammering. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. No reply. Lisa backed up quickly toward her office, but then the building plunged into darkness. The emergency lights blinked on, casting long, twisting shadows. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text. She pulled it out, hands trembling. The message read, "You shouldn't be here alone." Her skin crawled. She darted back inside and locked the door, but the tapping returned, right against the glass. She pressed her forehead to the cold window, peering into the shadow beyond. Nothing was visible, but the tapping grew louder, frantic now, as if whatever was out there was trying to break through. The computer screen flickered back on, but the files she had been working on were replaced with a grainy video feed. It showed her office from behind, a camera she didn't know existed, and in the reflection behind her, a figure stood, pale, motionless, its face hidden in darkness. Lisa spun around. No one. But the temperature in the room had dropped so low her breath formed clouds. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, "Don't look back." She wanted to scream, to run, but the door handle rattled violently. She gripped her desk chair, eyes wide, listening to the scrape of nails dragging down the wall. Then, as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. The lights returned to normal. The phone went silent. Lisa didn't wait. She grabbed her coat and bolted out of the building, not stopping until she was safe inside her car. The next morning, when the day crew arrived, they found the office empty, Lisa nowhere to be found. The security footage recorded her frantic escape, but the cameras showed no sign of the pale figure or the tapping. Weeks later, a new night shift worker mentioned an old legend about the building. A janitor who had vanished without a trace decades ago, rumored to haunt the halls at night, drawn to those who worked alone after dark. Lisa never returned, and sometimes on quiet nights the tapping can still be heard, echoing down empty hallways where no one should be alone.
Story number 4.
I worked the night shift alone at a small, rundown office building on the edge of town. The place was mostly empty, just a few filing cabinets and outdated computers. My job was simple: monitor security cameras, handle phone calls, and keep an eye out for any strange activity. It was boring, but the paycheck was decent, and I needed the money. On my third week, about halfway through my 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, I noticed something odd on the security feed. The camera focused on the lobby showed a figure standing completely still near the entrance. The footage was grainy, but I could tell it was a person, wearing a dark hoodie, face obscured by shadows. The building's front door was supposed to be locked tight at this hour, but the camera showed it slightly ajar. I called the security company's emergency number from the office phone. The line was dead. I tried my cell, but there was no signal inside the building. My stomach tightened, but I convinced myself it was just someone outside, maybe a homeless person or a delivery guy who hadn't left yet. I told myself to focus on the cameras. Minutes passed, and the figure didn't move. Then, on another camera angle facing the stairwell, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The same shadowy figure appeared at the top of the stairs, staring down at the empty office floor. The figure's head tilted unnaturally, like a broken doll's. I grabbed the only flashlight I had in my desk drawer and stood up, heart pounding. The building's silence pressed in on me like a heavy blanket. I slowly made my way to the stairwell, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I expected to find someone, but the stairwell was empty. The door at the bottom was locked, and the lobby was completely deserted. Back at my desk, the cameras flickered, and all the feeds went dark for a few seconds. When they returned, the figure was no longer in the stairwell or the lobby. Instead, it appeared in the hallway just outside my office, standing motionless, facing away from the camera. I couldn't see its face. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone to call the cops, but the screen was black, dead battery, though I charged it before my shift. Panic was rising fast. I decided to leave the office and go to the main exit to call for help. As I stepped out into the hallway, the lights flickered violently. The air turned cold and stale. I saw it then, a slow shuffle behind me. I didn't dare turn around, but I felt its presence getting closer, like icy breath on my neck. I ran to the exit door, but it was stuck. I pulled with all my strength as the footsteps quickened behind me. Finally, the door gave way, and I spilled out into the freezing night. I slammed it shut and locked it behind me. I glanced back through the glass and saw nothing but the empty building, silent and dark. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to call 911. When the officers arrived, they found no one inside, no intruder, no signs of forced entry. The security cameras, they'd been tampered with, wires cut, but oddly, all the footage after the blackout was gone. The strange figure, no one else had been there. I quit that night. But sometimes when I'm home alone after dark, I still get a chill, and I swear I hear footsteps just behind me, slow, deliberate, and watching.